Look at the... Oh, just sitting here looking at another design. This was a apron taken out of that same room, covered in crapola, just dust and bits and pieces, and thought, well, I'll wash it. And it's been hanging up on the railings that are up there. You see a pair of pants there for work. Just drying away for quite a while, and probably more than a week now. And so I thought, well, I was sort of looking at this thing the other day, and I thought, well, what sort of fabric is this? And I'm looking at it, and I was buggered to work out what fabric it is. And then the penny dropped. Look at the size of those threads next to my finger. This has never really been worn, but I've got the odd little fluff ball here and there on it. It's a good example there. Next to my finger, it's frayed out. And I finally realised what fabric this was. This is calico. Now, for those of you who aren't up on fabrics, it is basically the absolute bargain basement bin of cotton. What it effectively is, a lot of the cotton that you see is, you know, fully processed and been bleached and probably dyed a certain colour. This is cotton that's been taken. Now, those of you who don't know, raw cotton has a lot of oil in it, and a lot of that oil is cottonseed oil, I believe, and that's what they use in frying, and also sometimes using for tinned shellfish, like mussels that are cheap mussels over here. We tend to, you know, those often come in cottonseed oil. So basically, they've just removed the oil from the cotton, give it a fairly basic brushing to get any of the other, you know, bits of leaves and bits of, or whatever you call it, the shell thing that's around your cotton and all that out of the way. And then just spin it and put it on a loom, and you come out with this real heavy stuff. Now, when you see this as is, it's white, but it has flecks of brown through it that are probably a bit of the, you know, original cotton plant, or whatnot, and it's sort of basically unbleached, and that's why you get these brown flecks through it. Long story short, it's about like a tarp quality. Honestly, you'd never ever wear it. It's the sort of stuff that's about on the same level as tarp. It's just sort of a, you know, experimental sort of heavy duty but very low quality, really speaking, it's just low refinement. It's really rough, simply put, and very basic. And, you know, it's about as rough as bloody tarp. It's about on the same sort of a level. I've seen these used for dust covers for vehicles and stuff like that. But, I mean, other than sort of those sort of tarp-related things, you would never be wearing it in a shirt. But this is an apron, and what they've basically done to hide the fact it's calico and to just basically hide all the brown flecks in amongst the white, they've just dyed the whole thing black. And of course that's going to cover any brown marks. It mightn't if you dye it yellow, but it would if you dye it black. Now this is truly poor quality shit. It's heavy enough, so it's good to use as an apron because it'll take a fair hit. I think I got this a number of years ago, and it might have been only $5 or something, and that's probably more than 10 years ago. It's a rather intriguing design, but it's also very low quality in the way it's been made too, and I'll point that out in a second. Now what they've basically got is just basically a bit of fabric that's, for all intensive purposes, been a rectangle, and they've folded over one side here, and sewed it down, like one corner, and then the corner on the other side, done the exact same thing. Then they've got themselves a strip of it, and basically what they do is they fold it in on, like that's has been open, and they just get this side and they fold it up and back down, and up and back down, and then they run a stitch down there, and it holds it together. But you can feel there's a big lump under that side, and that side's flat. So that's the way it's been done. It's basically a strip that's folded in half, and then they get the last, what's that, not even a quarter inch where my thumbnail is there, that's folded in, and the same on the opposite side. And they run a stitch down there, and just to sort of keep it all flat, instead of ironing it or whatever, they've run another stitch down this side as well. It might be to make it look even. You can sort of see the stitch there. And then they get the ends and they roll those over a couple of times, and they run a stitch there, and that's just a forward and a reverse again. Now this is truly crap quality, and I can show you how. They've rolled this one under, and I can feel it's about there. So she's about, well, it's a bit more than a quarter inch. But here's the dead giveaway. As you can see, I'll just show you this part before I show you the dead giveaway. Strap goes up here through this corner that's folded in. That's where your neck goes through, and then down through this one, through that corner, and of course you get this end and the other end and tie them together around your back. And I'll pull this out for a second here, and I'll show you, I've got the flash on, how bad a quality this is. Now usually when you get a shirt, say for instance, you can see one down there, one of my work shirts, the inner side of it, properly done, will be done with an overlocker. And if I go and stumble around, I've got another shirt over here. There you go. So you get your raw edge of your blue and your raw edge of your yellow is all enclosed by that sort of a stitch. Now the machine itself, the overlocker as we call them, or in America you call them a serger, S-E-R-G-E-R, will actually cut it off. It's got what they call a knife on there, but as you're feeding it into the machine, it's sort of cutting off this edge and it's dropping all these little thin strips of fabric on the ground. But it actually uses 4 spools of thread at once to create this bizarre little stitch up, which holds together that raw edge. Now the trick that that's actually, because that's called a knit, where it's all sort of, if you look at it under a microscope, it almost looks like something that's knitted, versus a weave like this one, which is just left and right. And, you know, with your knits, they won't fray, whereas your normal weave, which has got your warp and your weft, I forget what one's in line with what, is, you know, like this. It just goes, you can see there, going from left to right. And there's another one that might be more obvious when I turn it over. It goes the other direction, but it's just boom and boom. That's how it's threaded. Now with those, you will have it fray, whereas knits won't necessarily, well, they won't fray at all. They may curl themselves up a bit, but they'll never fray. So what they do is they basically, when they get something, as they would have done with this edge here will be actually folded once and then folded a second time, and then it's sewn up, and you never actually see the raw edge. And if you do see the raw edge, it's likely to fray. And guess what? She's fraying, because these cheapskates, instead of actually rolling it right under, folding it once and then folding it a second time, this top edge here is only folded once. And so that's your raw edge there of your weave. And because it's a weave, it's going to fray. And it is fraying. That's signs that someone really doesn't give a shit. And the same going down the side. Same thing again. She's fraying. Have they put an overlocker into it? No. Here I am with a shirt, a work shirt. They put an overlocker onto a knit, which will never fray. So it doesn't really need an overlocker or a serge on it. But this bastard here, they're too lazy to even double fold it, so it is already fraying. And that's a weave, and weaves always fray. Almost guaranteed. Of course, your price of a knit is dramatically higher than the price of a weave because it's also a hell of a lot more complicated to make as a result. And here's proof in the pudding. Also, this corner that's folded in. Also, raw edge, completely open. And starting to fray as well. So, there you go. There's some of it, like this bottom edge here, and this where they've done it properly, and half of it where they just sort of haven't even given a real shit, and it's just fraying to bits, you know, and this is sold, you know, this is saleable stuff. I'll tell you another real strange anomaly. This is probably from China or India. I can't actually find a tag on the damn thing, which is strange. Usually you will, almost all the time. Maybe the tag was going to put them out another bloody 2 cents and they couldn't afford it. They're probably selling them for only $1 each, truth be told, you know, if I've bought it for $5. But that was probably more than 10 years ago that I got this. Probably 15 years ago. But the interesting thing is if I go and buy this in the shop, it costs me $11 a metre for calico. And, you know, needless to say, those of you who have seen it before it's been dyed, it looks like shit. And even when it's dyed, it still looks like shit. It really doesn't look, you know, it's nothing like this sort of stuff that's, you know. But this thing I got on, this is $2 a metre, polyester, versus blimmin' calico, $11 a metre. Now, why the hell would you want to go ahead and buy some unbleached, rough as guts, blimmin' raw, tarp quality shit for $11 a metre, if you can actually get a real tarp for, you know, probably only 1/10 that per metre when you start, you know, 1/8 of that when you look into it, or, you know, some other sort of fabric that comes out fairly nice for $2 a metre, you know, and this is the thing, like I've got stuff that almost seems to be cotton drill. This fabric here, that's wrong side, that's the right side, you know, and it really seems like it's cotton drill, but it's polyester, and that was $2 a metre. And this is the thing, why would you go to the effort of buying fucking horse shit for, you know, $11 a metre? You know, even, where is it? I've got one of these high-vis things here. I don't know where I put it. I think it might be still in my car. I've got other stuff, tracksuit material and stuff like that, you know, and even the high visibility stuff that's like a polar fleece, basically, you know, and that's cost me $8 a metre or $10 a metre. And yet they want, you know, $11 a metre for this, and that's a knit as well, so that won't fray. And yet they want $11 a metre for this blimmin' stuff, undyed, looking like crap with all these blimmin' brown flecks through it. I don't know how things work sometimes, but sometimes I'll tell you what, you really shake your head when you look at it all.